done here. It's not bad for being, what would it be, 50 years old? Not bad. You know, it's got no rollover protection, but that's not really an issue. I can definitely make something up for this. He said that the steering clutches are bad on this, but I think it's probably just an adjustment. He said he didn't have any time to mess with it. Let's see. It's got a lot of play in it. I'm prepared to put new steering clutches in it. It's about $1,000. My thought is, if you want to run equipment, you got to learn how to fix it. If you can't fix it, you got to buy brand new equipment. I don't know. In my opinion, it's probably just not the thing to do for you. Because even brand new equipment breaks all the time too. So, yeah, you can bring it into the dealer and you can wait weeks for them to fix it, but really, if you have a basic set of skills, you can do this stuff. this instead of a low boy.
Make your money work harder than ever. Ally's new smart savings tool.
There you go.
Bucket your savings for the things that matter most.
That's moved. Yep. Keep going. Yeah, that moved quite a bit.
All right.
There you go. Go.
No, I don't want to booger up that
Yeah, there you
side.
There it is. It's out. What? Okay. Got it.
And that wouldn't.
inside. I think so. Yep, that was it. Look at that. Almost positive I did.
Wonder if we even really. That's the brake lining.
And when it goes back. Okay, there we go.
Now watch. Nothing. There you go.
You. There you go. It's kind of a cap it.
Something about it. I don't remember what he said. Caught on that throwout bearing right now. Okay. That's it for that. Yeah, you could probably afford a Jericho right there.
Look at that. Hold on, let me just spin this. Okay. Up and out. Oh yeah, there we go. There we go. Let me just lift this up over it.
I got all the parts that I think I need to repair the dozer. So I got some new friction discs, and I got some more steel plates. There's 7 of these and 8 of these. This is the clutch housing, and that's fine. The drum on the outside is worn down a little bit. There's a little bit of a lip on the side. That's where the brake liner rubs against to create friction to stop this. Here's the new pressure plate. And the old pressure plate had some springs that were broken. So here's some of the old friction discs and plates. And you can see they're just really rusted. These, I could probably grind them down and reuse them. But these friction discs have, most likely they have asbestos in them, and they also swell up when they get moisture. So metal in general creates a lot of moisture, so those are obsolete. So I got the new friction discs here, which are supposed to be much better. They also have like a cutting edge on them. I kind of like that idea. That's like a drilled and slotted rotor. But these are like a bimetallic, these are like an alloy metal. They're a little bit more expensive, but they're supposed to not lock up. Just to give you an example of why this thing was froze up, the steering clutches, basically, if you don't touch them, they are tight. And then when you pull back the lever, you're actually releasing the clutches. So you're letting it spin. And it's frozen, and it's a very common problem on these machines. And here's an example of that. I tore a lot of these apart already, but pretty much every one of them was just like this. Watch this. They're just stuck together. See? And see how hard that was? They were really stuck together. So imagine all these being stuck together. These are an upgrade, so hopefully, even if you let it sit for a year, it'll still not lock up. Hopefully. But I think that's the trick. That's what I'm reading from other people that have these machines. So this goes in the middle there, and it holds all these discs together. And it's very important. There's a snap ring that goes on here. Well, it's not really a snap ring, but it's a locking ring. But this goes on that groove, and basically, so to start this, what I have to do first is put one of these in here. And you also want to make sure, I sandblasted this whole thing, that's why it looks a little bit rusty, and then I put some oil on it. But then I realized that this surface right here is really a surface that this disc is going to rub against, so I immediately took it off with some brake cleaner. I took the oil off this surface right here, and I left the oil on some of the other surfaces. But basically, you need to make sure that nothing has oil on it that rubs together. So these friction discs, they come coated in oil. You got to make sure you get that off with brake parts cleaner and the surfaces that it hits. So these discs here, these plates, look, they're covered in oil. Got to make sure you get all that oil off, otherwise you'll just wear these out like crazy. Because you're thinking like, well, this doesn't really spin that fast, it's not going to create that much friction. But the reduction in the gears actually makes this spin very fast, so hot spots can occur. So one important thing to remember is that this goes in here first, one of these, and then you put the snap ring on this gear here, and then you load the rest of them on here. So I'm going to do that now. So now you just alternate these discs. So you got the friction plate there, you got the steel plate here. Another friction plate. Another plate. I see people all the time, they say, "Oh, don't worry about that oil on there, that'll just burn that right off." Yeah, it will. Some of it will burn off, but some of it, when it heats up, things become porous, and some of it's going to go into those little pores as it heats up. So then you're just going to have hot spots. So it doesn't make sense to leave this oil on it. Look how much oil there is here. I'm just wiping it down first, and then I'm going to put brake cleaner on it. And if you did it right, hopefully the friction disc should be last. And it should be about flush with the edge or the face of this drum. So now you're ready to mount the pressure plate. When you're first putting this together, you got to put this shaft on the bottom, and then you put this other shaft on the top, and there's a pilot bearing inside of the other shaft, and this goes into there, and there's this little spacer here. Don't want to lose that. Make sure that that's snug and tight in there, and then you know that all the discs are in the centered spot the best they can be. And you want to do that before you put the pressure plate on, because once you put the pressure plate on, there's pressure on it once you tighten up the bolts, and then you can't really move it. So it's important to do that before you put this together. And then again, if you get any residue like oil on the surfaces, you need to clean those off. I think it's a good idea, once you start putting these bolts in, before you tighten them up, just stick that shaft in there again and recenter it. And then once these bolts are tight, then you can take the shafts away. And it says 21 pounds of torque, 21 foot-pounds of torque on these bolts. So now it's time to adjust these clutch fingers. You have to adjust each one separately to make sure that they're, first of all, equal with each other, and second of all, within tolerance of the height that you need. So what I did, what I first did actually was I printed out this template that I found online that you can go like this and figure out where it needs to be. This is a JD227 part number, but it's just a template, so you can make it into anything. So then I got doing some more research, and then I found out that the way that they measure it is from the face of this clutch housing to the highest point on this finger here has to be 2.012 inches. So what I did is I made this out of steel, and I just made sure that basically this bar is high enough where it's not hitting this right here. There's like 3/16 before it hits. So then I wanted to make sure that both of them were equal. So I think they were 2.59 inches. I have it written down. 2.51 inches. It was from basically there to there. So I welded that one, made sure it was square. And then this one I made sure the same thing, 2.51 inches square from here to here, and that leaves you just above this surface. So now if I'm looking for 2.012, I just take 2.51 and minus 2.012, and I've come up with 0.498 inches. So now I know, that's why I marked it on here, 0.498, and I have the arrows to make sure that this is the downside. So now I can just take this and put it on here, and I can take a micrometer, and I have it locked in. Well, it was locked in it, yeah. 4.98, which it's not going to matter that much. It can be 4.992, that's fine. As long as they're all equal. We'll just leave it on that. As long as they're all equal, that's close enough. So now I'm going to use this side of the micrometer to get the depth, which this one needs to go, this finger needs to go down a little bit. So here, let me just check this one. I already checked these, and one of them was pretty good. So I think it's this one here. I'm going to start on this side, and I'm going to put this in here. So this one needs to be raised up quite a bit. So there's a bolt on the side here. Use a 1/2 inch wrench. You can tighten or loosen it until it hits. I could probably just weld another piece on the back of here at that measurement. Now then I don't have to even measure anything. But for right now, I'll just go with this. See, it's still free in there, so just a little bit more tightening until it can't move around. Let's see. Right about there. These little tabs here, you can't adjust the bolt without taking it out. So just pop them off like this. Kind of spring loaded, so watch out. So that's how easy it can be if you let it be. So I just found this to be the quickest, and you know what, I have that other loader that I may have to do some work like this, so I don't mind welding up a tool like that. There's only a couple tack welds. This one I can see right off the bat, it's way out of adjustment. It's way too high right now. So those tabs just make it so that that bolt can't back out. So this clutch is already be installed. I didn't see any mention of it in the book, but I'm just going to assume that it would not be the worst thing in the world to put a little bit of oil or grease in these little slots, seeing how these spacer plates need to move inside of that. I think at least some lithium grease or something would be nice. And then also you want to put some spline lube or maybe even just some grease on the splines here. And then this thing should be ready to go. So now for the brake bands. These are really not in terrible shape. I'm sure that I could reuse these and get the rest of the life of this machine out of it. But just because I don't want to take any chances, I'm going to put some new liners on this. So the company I bought this from sent me these. So that brake liner should, in theory, just come right off. I think the old ones, the original ones to this machine, were glued on with some sort of adhesive. Those are a lot harder to get off. These ones are easy. You just get the rivets off. I'm noticing there's a lot of junk on this. So I'm going to make sure that I wire wheel that off. As you can see, there's some stuff sticking up pretty good on it. A lot of this stuff I'm doing here is just good measures. I don't think you really have to do a lot of this stuff. So I'm going to attempt to drill through the back side to give myself the location of these existing rivet holes. And if I don't have luck with that, I'm just going to drill new holes. But let's just see. Let's just see if I can just get these by themselves. So to bring you guys up to speed on this, these are the old brake bands, and I had taken the liner off, and then I tried to put on this new liner, and I really didn't understand how hard this would be. So to put this liner on, you need to first of all line up the old holes. And so I drilled through the old holes into the new ones with just like a smaller bit, like a pilot bit. And then I took a drill bit and I tried to countersink these holes so that they were almost at the end, so that the rivets didn't start biting when this brake wears down. So you got to countersink these holes so that these rivets can go in and be sticking down as far as they can, because otherwise you'll rub on those when your brake band liner wears out a little bit. So I tried to do that, and every time that I tried to drill a hole, it was really inconsistent. And it would like try to bite too much and go down too quick, or it wouldn't bite at all, and then you'd try to push it down more and it would bite right through it. And then I ended up going through like 3 of these. It went right through the liner, so I didn't have any meat left to grab onto with the rivets. And so that, with the fact that I couldn't get the backs of them crimped right, see, that's a terrible job. I was trying to make do with like a homemade system that I did for these rivets. So I thought it was a great idea to try to reline these, because I didn't have any idea how hard it would be. But you know, I don't give up on many things too often, but this was one of those things where I was like, you know what, I do not want to do this again just because of the stupid brake band. So let me just order a new one. I'll wait another week and I'll do it right, because I don't want to, if these are countersunk too much, it doesn't even hold it at all. So the next thing I know, this thing will come off and it could even destroy something in there, and then I'd have to take this whole thing apart again, and I don't want to do that. So I just ordered new ones. These are like $200 for a new one. So here's the new one. And these actually have more rivets in them too, now that I'm looking at them. But it's the same material that's in here, which is like this like fiber material that's got some sort of metal in it. And here's the new ones that I was trying to put on. And this is like not what you would think it would be. It's not like drum brakes on a car. It's almost like a cloth material. It's really weird, but you can see it's got little strands of metal in it too. But anyways, so now I got these. These are like $200, and it was well worth it. The liners were $60, but I had no idea how hard it would be to do that. So I just got to put these together real quick. I was using this on the back side of these rivets to bend them over. And so the rivets like this, and then on the back side I hit it like this, but it's the right idea, but it's not very accurate, because this thing can go to the side or get cocked like that a little bit, and then it just favors one side more than the other. As I'm putting this together, I'm going to try to put some brake lubricant on everything. I was going to use Neverseeds, but I don't really know how hot it's supposed to get. I think this stuff is good for like 2,500 or 3,000 degrees. put a new throwout bearing on it. For some reason there was a bolt missing on the bottom of this. And so I put a new one on here. I had to basically take a longer one and cut it down so that the smooth shank is here instead of the threads. So I don't know why that one was missing, and if you don't have it in there, I don't even know how it works, so I don't even know how it was ever working. And I didn't see any bolts on the bottom of the case, so I'm not really sure what's going on with that, but in any case there's a bolt in there now. So see, that spring puts tension on this, and you're supposed to do the same thing on the bottom. There's another spring on the bottom, but again, that bolt wasn't in there, so I don't even know how that was even working. But you can't even see it, but you can feel for it, so I just clipped it on there. And until you do that, you only have half the spring pressure. And see, now there's a lot of pressure on that because there's two springs, so if you only have the top spring on, then that's only half the pressure. That's the return pressure for it. Put the shaft through. Make sure that this end is the end that accepts the pilot bearing. Now it's through the clutch, so now I just got to get it into the gear housing there. Okay. Now that's in the gear housing. I'm going to go ahead and put my lower brake band release spring in. Now I got to spin this about, I don't know, almost 90 degrees. It's on the bottom. There's a little clip. You got to make sure you clip this thing on there, otherwise you won't have any return on these brake bands. So then you got the set screw on that shaft. You got to make sure that you make it into the groove before you set that. So you got to wiggle it around and look at it before you even set it. because you don't want to just set it against just straight up metal. There's a groove for it. So once that one shaft is in there, there's another shaft on the outside you have to put in. It's much bigger, and that goes to this housing right here. There's a pilot bearing that goes right on the end of that shaft. Now that clutch assembly is supported because it's got the two shafts going through it that are aligning it right now. So now you can take off your support and spin around the brake band. All I used for this was just a set of scaffolding that I could just attach this come along to. I just didn't have a machine right here that I could use right now, so I just set up this and it worked pretty good. So I would say it's pretty important to put that spring on the bottom there. And it's something that, again, you can't see it. You got to feel your way around. But if you do it before you have this whole assembly on right here, then it's easy to do. This gets threaded into the brake band on the one side. This pin right here holds the other end of this brake band. So now that brake is on there, just needs to be adjusted. When I took this clutch housing cover off, there was no return spring on the top side of the brake band. And really all that does is at all times it's pulling back on this brake band, which the separation between the brake bands is right there. So you're like pulling back on it, which is releasing it more. That way it doesn't drag from gravity pulling it down onto the drum. So naturally it'll stay just a little bit off of it until you put tension on it. What I figured was I'm gonna get these covers back on, get it all waterproof, and then I'm gonna pressure wash this all out. Get this nice and clean, and then I wanna paint things up. While I have everything apart, I want this thing to look pristine when it's done. This one over here had a little bit of brake being applied, but only from the foot, because the foot was adjusted right. But the lever for the clutch lever, the steering lever, was not engaging the brake on this side. Plus, obviously, it was frozen up too. So this side over here, I'm hoping will be okay. I'm hoping I'll never have to tear into it again. I did not take the clutch assembly out to inspect it. I probably should have, but that involves taking the track off, involves a bunch of stuff I didn't really want to get involved in, and I'm 99% sure that that's not necessary. I just needed to make some adjustments. It was really out of adjustment. This screw right here was about a ½ an inch away from there, where right now it should be snug to there. So that's the brake adjustment, and this is the clutch adjustment, and that's just where it engages. But then you can also tighten up the whole brake assembly with this bolt here, and you can access that from the side. So all the adjustments that I can do for this are accessible once I put it back together. So I did get it all adjusted the way I want, and I'm hoping that everything will work out. It seems to, when you look at the differences between them, they both engage at the same time. But just in case they don't, for some reason, if something's out of adjustment still, I have all the accessibility to adjust them as much as I want after the fact. And it's not really that hard. You just reach from the side. See, so that cover is off right there, so you can adjust that. And it's got like a bolt with a nut that has a detent in it, and when the detent falls into place, then it can't move, and you adjust it accordingly to that. But you can access it easily even with the tracks on. And then this top plate, you can also adjust things underneath that, and that's accessible too. It's underneath the seat. All you have to do is take the seat off and take those 5 bolts off, and then you can get right to that. So it's all ready to be put back together now. It's just a matter of cleaning things off, painting things, making sure I get everything that I can while I'm right here and it's accessible. That's 1/2 inch mild steel. I wasn't having the greatest of luck trying to use a hole saw to get these cut out, so I came up with this solution, and it seems to be working pretty good. It's just a jig that I made up for the plasma cutter. So I found out that this is about the same size as the tip of the plasma cutter. So these are just bushings, and I welded them together, and then I put an adjustable sleeve on here, kind of, and then I made this little pin. So all I have to do is find the center hole, and then I put this pin in here, drive the pin in a little bit to make it tight, and then I can just spin around. I made a little starting hole here, and then I can start the plasma tip right there and then just spin right around with it. And this is adjustable because when I originally put it in, it was a little bit too far out and made this circle too big. So then I put it in, and now I know exactly where to set it, and it provides me with about a 3 5/8 hole, because this Schedule 43-inch pipe is 3.5 inches on the outside, so I want a little bit more than that for wiggle room. I kind of wish I could leave these on here for stacks on this thing. It looks pretty cool. I like that. This is what I got for over here. This is 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch. This is a 3/4 inch bolt, and you can still get to it from underneath here, so you can take it off. Really, the idea behind this is I'm not trying to rely on the strength of this to save the machine from flipping over, because the back here, I'm trying to make this much stronger than the factory, so that you're really relying on these two back here to do all the work. So I was just trying to get everything all mocked up and just tack welded, and I think I'm pretty happy with this, because you can still take out the pin for the cylinder if you need to. Now I'm just going to burn all this together, and then I can do the same thing on the other side. So I got it all assembled and tack welded, the frame of it anyways. All right. I think you're gonna have to back up just a little bit. All right. More. More. Yeah, like that. I put what I'm gonna call a canopy on this because I don't want anybody to build something from my direction and have something fail and possibly lose a life or something. So I'm gonna call this not a rollover cage, not rollover protection. I'm just gonna call it a canopy. But for my own personal self, I know this will hold. And I didn't really show a lot of it because it's not something that everybody should be doing. The way that this is normally mounted would be just one bracket here with a couple of gussets going down, and that's it. So it would use, I think it uses 2 bolts if you do that. So the way that I did it here is I was able to use 4 bolts and go all the way down, bring the pipe all the way through, and that's, I know that's gonna hold. The way that I figure this is I made the back extra strong so that that will hold it from rolling over and somebody losing their life on it. So the front here, I made this bracket here and then I bolted it down to it, which I think that would hold if it rolled over, but I'm not depending on that at all. I'm totally depending on the back here holding it from rolling over. So my theory is that because these pipes go through these brackets, and then I also have some gussets going in the side here, I highly doubt that this could go anywheres. And the front is just there to hold everything together. It might be strong enough to hold this machine from rolling over, but I'm not depending on that. So I also put these brackets in the front here, which will help with falling limbs or a tree possibly. If something was to happen, it was to push weight right here, it would distribute that weight over to here and it would distribute it over to there too. So it would be pushing on everything at once. I gave this a really quick paint job. I was only able to get 1 gallon of this John Deere paint from the dealer. That's all they had, and it's like $100 for the gallon too. So I did it quickly and I didn't get everything. I was gonna paint the pads too, but I just ran out. So what I did is I tried to paint everything else except for the track and the chain, and then I used the Ferguson gray on the canopy. So I got this spot over here. I just want to push this so it's flat. I got this pile here because a couple years ago we dug this to put some fish in, but now I'm going to fill this all in. So I'm just going to push this pile into it, and I got some other piles over there from drainage ditches. This stuff right here. I'm just going to quickly push this. So overall, I'm pretty happy with this machine. I paid $3,500 for it. I've got about $1,500 into it, and maybe a week if I count like a day each weekend or something. So I guess I got $5,000 into it plus my time. Not too bad. I'm actually quite surprised on how good these hold their value. I've seen a lot of them for sale for $15,000. Some of them are $10,000, and if they have problems, maybe a little less, but in good shape, which I would consider this almost getting there. They're going for about $15,000. I've seen ones that look a lot worse than this for 15. So this is, I think it's like a 68 or 69. The first JD, the straight 450, is somewheres in the late 60s, early 70s. So overall, and it weighs about 8 tons. So overall, this was a good experience for me because I've never had a dozer. I'm just still learning how to operate it, honestly, but I think it does pretty well. I would have never got it if it had a straight blade on it. The only reason I really got it was because it had the 6-way blade on it. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't even been interested. So like I said, I didn't really show a lot of this canopy being made because I think it's dangerous for somebody like the average person to try to do this, because you're relying on that. Like if you ever flip over, your life is relying on that. So I didn't really want to instruct people of how to do something really dangerous like that. But I'll tell you what, I got another machine to do this on. This is that track loader that I had at the beginning of the video. I got them both at the same time because they were only about 10 miles apart. I had to go about 60 miles to get both of these, but they were pretty close to each other. So I paid, well actually I traded my motorcycle for this. I had a CBR 600 F4i and I just traded it for this, and I only paid $1,500 for that motorcycle. So this guy was asking $2,500 for this, and this is a 450B, so it's a little bit newer. I think it's like a 74. So I'm going to be doing a canopy for this one too. Maybe by that point I'll call it rollover protection. I'm not sure. I was going to test the canopy that I have, that I built, and see if I can use this machine to tip that machine kind of on its side, but not to the point where it goes like all the way over. I just want to see if everything is strong enough to at least tip it up on its side, and then maybe I'll feel better about telling you guys what I did with it. So this one's, the mounts on the back are going to be exactly the same, but the mounts on the front are going to be different because I'm going to be welding to this arm right here, and basically it's just a massive amount of steel right there. I'm not sure if that's completely solid steel right there, but if it is, it's 2.5 inches thick. So I gotta attach to that, and then on the back it'll be the same, and then on the front maybe I'll do the same thing too, put those cross braces in. I actually think I might have more use for this in the current situation that I'm in with a few jobs than I will the dozer. The dozer is good for this property, but on the jobs I think this actually could go there first and get more use. So I'm gonna get on fixing this.